Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first webinar with Digital Search. We'll be doing a four-part education series with them on various topics all around crypto and how to stay safe and protect yourself in this exciting but very information overload industry. And tonight we're going to be talking about what's the difference between centralized and decentralized, and how to kind of stay safe inside the ecosystem. And today's session is powered by Digital Surge, which you'll hear and learn from a little bit more throughout today's webinar. So the webinar is broken down into two parts. I just want to kind of set the intention and theme. The first part is educational, and I try to keep it in and around the 20 to 25 minute mark. And it is very focused and for beginners. So for new people that have been in this space for a while, maybe a lot of this content isn't going to be new for you. Maybe some of it is going to be a refresher. Maybe you're kind of new to crypto. You may have heard it before, but now hearing it again will kind of help solidify it. So the first part of today's webinar is this educational component. And then we have our guest speaker coming in, where we'll be kind of doing more of a fireside chat with Josh Lehman, who is one of the co-founders of Digital Surge. I personally have known Josh for very many years because he's a local actual based exchange, Brisbane, and I'm based in Brisbane. And we'll be bringing him in for a fireside chat to talk about, how centralized exchanges and how they use storage, like cold storage. And we're going to talk about that as we go through today's session. So we will be bringing him in around 7:30. So first part will be kind of like an education, and then the second part we will be bringing in Josh. So that's how it's going to go down. As I said, we're going to talk about the difference between centralized and decentralized in terms of exchange. We're also going to talk about the wallets, okay, the difference between the money that you say leave in your crypto wallets inside of a centralized exchange compared to if you want to participate with the decentralized exchange using cold or hard storage, and then best practices for storing those. But we're not only going to discuss that with what's your best practices, but also what are exchanges doing to make sure and securing their cold storage and how they're using that. So that's what we're going to cover today. For those of you that I have not had a chance to meet yet, just briefly overview, you can go ahead and scan the QR code, connect with me. LinkedIn's probably the best place if you ever want to send me a message, probably the place I'm going to see it the most. My name's Danielle Marie. I'm the founder of Evolve Her and All Things Blockchain, which the Education Hub and this whole webinar series is powered by. And I've been a blockchain and crypto educator for over 5+ years now. And so everything I kind of really do is around events and community building and education through all things blockchain and Evolve Her. Now, as I've mentioned, webinar Wednesdays, so every single Wednesday, and I'd love to see um, in the chat here, I'm just curious if you were here last week. I'd love to see, just put a hi. Yes, I was here last week if you caught the one, because we are doing them every single Wednesday. So I'm curious to see how many people are committed. There'll be different topics every single Wednesday, but obviously if you can't make it, it's okay because we will record them. But you can go ahead and join up to we have somebody that was into the Education Hub. And this is where we share all of our recordings. This is also where we already have some short courses curated in there for you. And this is where we'll be building out more short courses through inside, and then be putting them inside the Education Hub. It's 100% free. You can jump in there and you can start learning, and you can also catch up. Also, we've launched this community hub recently on WhatsApp. This is also where you can ask questions, share things, promote yourself, join different channels. And we've been kind of slowly working on building that out. Full disclosure, we may move over to Telegram for various reasons, which I won't discuss on here, but we're trying to find the right home for our community so that you can have easier access to be able to ask questions and stuff like that. So, a few housekeeping tips. I actually just realized that I have a slide missing from the presentation. But just let's do a little bit of housekeeping that this is being recorded. None of the information that we're going to be providing for you today is financial advice. It is literally just for education purposes only. So we're not recommending that you go and purchase or invest in any type of crypto. And to always do your own research, okay? And I want you to ask questions, so you can definitely pop your questions. You can definitely pop your questions in the chat and I will always get back to them. We might have to take them at the end of the call because we've got Josh coming in at 7:30. But also in the education hub, there's channels that you can ask questions, and there's also inside of the community group you can ask questions as well. So please, as we're going through this presentation, if you have questions, write them down or put them in the chat because we can go over them and they can get answered. It just might be at the end of the session. So that's the housekeeping, I believe, everything. So now we will move on to the first part. So welcome to part one, the centralized versus decentralized and how to stay safe in the crypto space. And this session is powered by Digital Surge. So how do you buy crypto? I would like to see actually maybe in the chat how many of people here have already purchased crypto one time before. Like they already have a centralized exchange account and they purchased crypto. You just put a yes in the chat or a no. Thank you, Robert, for sharing. Because if you have purchased crypto, then you've probably kind of gone through some of this process before. But it's kind of important for everybody. First of all, disclaimer, I am not a financial advisor, so we are not recommending that you go and buy crypto. This is for your education purposes only. And we always recommend that, if you go and kind of seek out, financial advice from somebody that has the proper licenses and get advice for your own personal situation. This is literally just information and tools for you to try to make the best educated decision if you are wanting to start, speculating or learning more about the cryptocurrency industry and how to do it safely. That's the main thing with our education is we just want you to learn how to do it safely because centralized versus decentralized in terms of exchanges. Okay, definitely when you're playing with decentralized exchanges, you really want to know what you're doing safely. But there's also a component with centralized exchanges that it's important for you to know and understand in order to keep yourself safe if you are going to speculate and make investments in digital assets. So what are centralized exchanges? In my personal opinion, how I like to describe them is they're modern day banks. They are, the way that we are storing some of our cryptos, and we're going to talk about the different ways that you can store them. But they are the kind of the trusted central authority. They have to kind of like follow all the kind of same rules and such as those banks, and so do we, which we're going to unpack as we go through this webinar. But they're kind of that trusted middleman between the sellers and the buyers. So I want to sell some Bitcoin. Robert wants to buy some. They kind of help us facilitate that. They're kind of like that trusted middleman. The irony, obviously, is we're talking about using blockchain, which is about creating decentralization, but that's for another topic and another day. Often they use really easy interfaces. That's actually why I love Digital Surge. It's just a simple, easy to use tool. And they also provide kind of like a lot of liquidity and such to the different pools, so to make it easy for you to buy and sell whatever token that you're looking to sell or buy. Built-in services like customer support. They follow rules. They have KYC and AML, which we're going to talk about, which you don't get, and we'll unpack when we go through decentralized exchanges. And then the fiat and on-ramp and off-ramp. So this is probably one of the biggest ones. Okay, yes, they provide all those other those features. But how do you buy crypto? Okay, well, you have to take your fiat in whatever country you're in. Okay, if you're in America or if you're in Europe or if you're in Australia, it doesn't matter. If you're in the Philippines, I know that we had somebody from the Philippines. It doesn't matter. You need to somehow be able to actually purchase it. So they offer that on-ramp and off-ramp for you to be able to kind of make whatever investment that you want. And so that's kind of very important for you to look in your local region what exchanges offer on-ramp and off-ramp. Because just because you might be able to trade on an exchange, which we'll talk about a little bit further down the line, but you might not be able to withdraw, say, if you want to sell that to your local currency and withdraw it into your bank account. Not all exchanges offer that, but we'll get to that in just a moment. But it's important to understand, what is KYC, know your customer, know your client. You might have heard it kind of referred to. And when a centralized bank or a centralized exchange, they all have to kind of follow these rules that are in place and this regulation. So they have to kind of know who you are, and this is to prevent, anti money laundering scams, and to follow that policy and to know who the customer is. And ultimately to kind of just, stop any kind of nefarious type of activities that are happening. And so these exchanges have a requirement to know who you are and verify your identity. And then if they think that you're doing anything kind of dodgy or bad, they have the requirement to report that to the authorities to be able to kind of make sure to keep kind of people safe. And all centralized exchanges will kind of need to follow these policies. Now, there's lots of different exchanges. This is only some of them that we have highlighted on here for you. We've kind of listed some of the more kind of bigger named popular global exchanges that you may have heard of before. BitGet, Binance, Kraken, Bybit. And then on the other side, you'll see kind of our localized kind of exchanges, Digital Surge, who this webinar is powered by and who we work quite closely with. But we also know the Elevate team and the SwiftX and BTC Market team. So there's definitely plenty of choice. So whenever you're deciding to use a platform, I personally have multiple different accounts. My primary one that I use for not only for my business, but for my personal is Digital Surge. And it always has been because it's just an easy platform for me to use. And it has everything. They've got good customer service. I like the team. But I also have accounts with other organizations. Like I have an account with Binance. You know what I mean? Sometimes there might be a token that I might be able to get on Binance and I might not be able to get in Digital Surge, for example. Or sometimes it's also just kind of good to have different exchanges. But over the years, I've now been in this space for ages. I probably have about three or four that I have crypto a little bit sitting on actively. So you generally have more than one account. If you are Australian, just to full disclaimer here for all of our overseas participants on today's webinar, unfortunately, you won't be able to create an account with Digital Surge because they are currently, I know that they have some plans to expand, but currently at the moment only based in Australia. But if you are based in Australia and you do not have a Digital Surge account and you want to get started, you can use that code. I think that Jenica will also drop a link in the chat for you. And they just give you $20 for free. There's no catch, okay? It's really for you to be able to feel comfortable, get in, look at the platform, maybe buy a token, sell it, so that you can have a little bit of a play and get really quite comfortable in there before you go in and put in your own capital to make any type of investments. So, what are decentralized exchanges then? So now we know that the centralized exchange is basically how we do our on-ramp and off-ramp, and they provide customer service, and they provide, an easy way to be able to kind of buy and sell, and they provide lots of liquidity. Well, what's a decentralized exchange, which you'll also hear referred to as a DEX? So that means that there's no middleman like the exchange, okay? So like Digital Surge that we were talking about. There is no KYC, and they use smart contracts. Now, we're not going to unpack what smart contracts are. So if you're new to this and you haven't heard, you need to just keep tuning in. You need to go and do some of the courses that are in the Education Hub. But they use smart contracts basically to remove that kind of like that need for the human intermediary. But they don't offer fiat on ramp and off ramp. So for you to actually play in the decentralized ecosystem in DeFi, you do have to find a way of getting money, which is generally from the centralized exchange, into your Web3 wallets, which we're going to talk about shortly, so that you can connect them to the centralized exchange. Because there's no way you can't use your credit card or deposit any cash to buy any sort of token on a decentralized exchange. There's also no customer support, unlike um, Digital Surge that has live during like Australian business hours. They have like live customer support. If you have any issues, you can get access to it. If you have any issues with a decentralized exchange, there's nobody that you can ask for help or try to figure out what happened, or maybe you got scammed, maybe your wallet got drained. There's nobody that's going to be able to help you. But you can access new tokens. So this is one of the reasons why people play in the decentralized space is because often tokens take a while to get on a centralized exchanges because centralized exchanges have to do their due diligence on what tokens that they're listing onto their platform. So often if you want to get into a project in early stages, your opportunities to buy them are generally going to be on these decentralized exchanges. So that's kind of one of the bonuses. It is the backbone to DeFi. We'll be talking about DeFi more next month in one of the webinar series. But there is no live help desk as I already recommended. Now, there's some popular dexes. Uniswap's been around for a long time. PancakeSwap, which is on BNB, and Radium, which is on Solana. So those are, we just kind of like highlighted one of on each of the kind of some of the major chains. But if you are a beginner and you are new to the crypto space, I really don't recommend that you jump down and start using a DEX until you understand. We're not going to go through too much on a deeper level, specifically in DeFi. I don't spend a lot of time in the DeFi space because one, I'm busy growing two social impact startups and educating people, and also I'm not really that type of trader. It's not who I am. I'm more of a hodler. We're going to talk more about like dollar cost averaging, what type of trader, and kind of your risk tolerance actually next month and the next digital surge. But I really webinar. I just really just recommend if you're new and beginning, just take your time before you go and start playing with decentralized exchanges. So if you want to open up a centralized exchange, now we're kind of looking through the lens here in Australia, but this is pretty much standardly across all of Australia. But you need to have, you need to prove your ID and prove your address. We recommend always doing it on a secure internet when you're setting these things up. And then obviously you're going to have a way of depositing money into the account. So a lot of the local exchanges will allow you to, either do bank transfer, some let you use credit card, but be able to, here in Australia, we've got Pay ID. So a lot of them, but when you are purchasing for the first time from a centralized exchange, especially specifically in Australia where I'm based currently, the first time you do Pay ID, it will generally take like 24 hours. And then after that, it will be instant, both in and out. Okay, so you need to be able to set up your account so that you can actually buy crypto. But then you might be thinking like, okay, well, I've done that. I've gone on. I've bought some Bitcoin. I held it for a while, and now I want to spend it or I want to get rid of it. Well, what are different things that you can do? How can you spend it? There are crypto debit cards that you can actually get money out from local ATMs, but there also are Bitcoin ATMs as well. There's actually one Bitcoin ATM in the corner shop at the corner shop on my street, but then there's also crypto and debit cards where you can actually withdraw money wherever that takes. Like it's like a Visa or kind of like MasterCard, but it's like a debit card, and then you can spend it. Also, some merchants take crypto directly. Like there's some places in Bali that I go to that you can actually pay with your wallet. There's also platforms like BitPay or Living Room of Satoshi, where you basically can transfer your crypto and pay any type of bill that you want, right? So it is much easier these days to spend crypto than it used to. And then people often ask me, they're like, "Oh, are there any ways that I can earn Bitcoin?" Right? Like, I don't have a lot of money to invest, or I just want to learn. What are some different ways? So let's talk about referral and affiliate rewards. This isn't specific to the crypto industry. This is for anything, apps. They'll always give you, a bonus if you refer an app, and even Uber does it, Airbnb, everybody does it. It's nothing new, but so that's one of the ways. Because then if you say recommend digital search, for example, and you join their affiliate program, full disclosure, I've been a referral partner of theirs for years because I love their platform. I use their platform. So naturally, because I love their platform, I'm going to recommend it to people. And then there's an opportunity. And then what I personally do, if I get any commissions from any of the referrals, I take that personally and I buy more Bitcoin with it, and then I leave that in there. So that is a way that you can earn some crypto. Cashback on cards, different cards. We're not going to go through all of them, but there's plenty of cards on the market. They're connected to different exchanges. So like Bybit, for example, have a card, crypto.com have a card. A lot of local exchanges are looking at bringing on cards. There's stable cards. So you just have to go onto the market and kind of take a look with what's in your region and what type of exchanges oops, I just went the wrong way, that you could create an account with that would have a card, but there are plenty of them. There's lots of learn to earn programs where you can do tutorials. I know a lot of different platforms that are now really kind of trying to implement this and kind of reward you for learning and learning how to do things. And then one of the other ways is staking and on-chain rewards. We're going to talk about staking and like what are on-chain rewards on a deeper, more in-depth level in the lesson next month. I believe it's on the 18th, the basics of DeFi. But this is where I'll give you an example. Maybe you make some referrals to a product. We're going to talk about Tangem later, which is a hardware wallet. Maybe you get one of those and then you refer people and then you earn $10 USDT every single time you refer somebody to, use a Tangem wallet or sign up with something. And then you take that and then you buy a cryptocurrency, whether it be Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, any of them. And then you, after a while, take that and then you stake that basically, which means that you're locking it up and then you're going to get a yield from it. Same as traditional, and we're not going to talk about traditional and DeFi in this webinar. I don't want to get too distracted because I know that I've got a lot of content to get through before I bring in Josh. But basically, it's just a way that you'll basically get a passive yield on it. So how can you? Why do I keep going the wrong way? Sorry, folks. I may as well just keep using this button here. So mining and staking, I've already talked about liquidity mining and yield farming. That is more DeFi. We're not going to unpack that today, okay? But in airdrops and bounties, the second page here is definitely more connected to DeFi, which we'll talk about more next month on the 18th, and also for a little bit more for your educated, sophisticated, kind of investor that has learned about these tools and how to use them. I don't really recommend beginners to jump in there right away. So before you invest in crypto or anything, in my opinion, always do your own research, take the time, understand. Don't just buy something because the cab driver told you about it or your friend told you it was going to be the next token that's going to 10x, because really, I don't know if there's going to be a lot of tokens that are going to 10x ever again. And that's for another different conversation. But you want to also learn how you want to interact with the market. Do you want to be an active trader? Do you want to be a hodler? That's what I do. I also dollar cost average in and out when I am deploying capital into my investments, and will be be talking a lot more about that in the next webinar. But you need to identify what kind of trader you are or investor that you are. And then I would also then seek out professional advice because everybody has different situations, and you should also never invest any more than you can afford to lose. Like that's my number one piece of advice. But just we're not telling you to invest in crypto. This is our advice that if you are going to, these are the things that we highly recommend that you do. We just want you to be safe, right? Because it can be full of a lot of tokens and a lot of projects that are very scammy. And that's why we're also providing you this education. So, last part that we're going to cover before we bring in Josh, how do you keep your crypto safe? And Josh is actually going to be answering how does Digital Surge keep their crypto safe and their customers' crypto safe from a centralized exchange perspective. But it's important for you to understand the difference between your centralized wallet and your decentralized wallet. So we've just talked about the two different types of exchanges. Now let's talk about those wallets and how you protect your crypto and where do you actually leave your crypto, because a lot of people they hear the term crypto wallet and they think that the crypto is actually stored in the wallet. And when you tell them that crypto is not actually stored inside their wallet, they kind of give you this funny look and they look at you about where does it live. So that's right, your cryptocurrency doesn't actually live in the wallet. So if you've got a wallet on your phone, it's not living in that application, it's living stored into the blockchain. So same kind of analogy, if your debit or your bank card, if you lose this, you don't lose the money, it's kind of sitting on these payment rails. So in crypto, they are living on the chain that they're native to. So if it's Bitcoin, it would be stored on the Bitcoin blockchain. If it was Ethereum, it's on the Ethereum blockchain, and so on. Okay. And so what does that mean? What does a crypto wallet do? Well, right now, because we're going to be talking to Josh shortly, right after we get through this part, about how the centralized exchanges wallets work and in terms of how they're keeping them safe. But right now, we're going to kind of talk about a more of your Web3 wallet. And so these are the wallets that you use to interact with the DeFi space, okay? Or we refer to them as hot wallets, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But they basically act as your user interface, your gateway to be able to see your balance, be able to see past transactions, and then also be able to interact with the blockchain, to be able to kind of do transactions. And inside, they store your private keys. And we're going to talk about your private keys in just a moment. It allows for you to be able to sign to do transactions. So if you've got money living in the blockchain, it's sitting on the blockchain, but you basically need to be able to speak to it. There's a lot more technical terms to talk about these RCP. I always forget the acronym. These nodes that speak to the blockchain, and we could go down a bit more on a technical route, but we're not going to. We're going to keep it very surface level today. You'll get a recovery phrase, also sometimes referred to as a seed phrase or private keys, which are 12 to 24 words. And we'll unpack that a little bit more as we go through, but it also gives you full access and full ownership. So that's why we're going to talk about why it's so important to protect these private keys and this cold storage. So, and we're going to talk about in a moment the different types of wallets. Yes, perfect. This is the slide that I thought was coming up next. So they can kind of be broken down into these different categories. And the main ones that you're going to use and come across is software and hardware. Paper is pretty much not really in existence anymore, but it is a thing. So I have it in here. So you've got your software, your hot wallets. Okay. So these are apps or browsers. They're connected to a browser extension. They're always kind of connected to the internet, which makes them hot. That also makes them higher risk for scams. But it's convenient because you've got them, easy to be able to kind of connect for trading and payment, but a higher risk. Hardware, cold storage, which we're going to talk about, is physical devices. And this is where your private keys and everything are stored completely offline. So this is considered the safest way possible. So when you think of hot versus cold, just think that hot wallets are always kind of connected to the internet. So if your phone, your device, your computer, or whatever is compromised in any form of way, they can get access to your private keys if you have, wallets inside of your browser or on your phone compared to offline. And we're going to talk about ways that you can store those, but it's much harder for them to get access to your crypto. And then paper wallets are a bit old school and a bit OG, but they do still exist. But you can literally print out the seed phrases. You can have a QR code on there, and they were very popular back in the day. So there's different types of hot wallets. I've got some examples. MetaMask, Phantom, and Trust Wallet are probably some of the more popular ones. Phantom's on Solana. MetaMask is on built on mainly focused on Ethereum products. A lot of them now do have interoperability and offer tokens on each. But before they started offering those to be able to provide more utility, Trust Wallet, which is a multi-chain wallet, is one that kind of offers, because sometimes it's you don't want to be managing so many different wallets and all those private keys. So hardware wallet, there's a few different ones. So Tangem, who I actually was learning more about today, because we might be collaborating with them and doing some more educational content on a deeper level on this topic. You've got Treasure, and then you've got Ledger. So if you are going to get a hardware wallet, go and do your research. These are probably the top popular three. Ledger and Treasure have been down for a while. Tangems are really kind of new, up and coming, very popular. That they've got this whole tech that's different, that it makes it easier for you to manage your private keys. You don't even have to, because the cards are the keys. So go and check it out. Go and do your research. But if you are going to have a large sum of cryptocurrency, never store it in a hot wallet. Always make sure that you can cold storage wallet. And we're going to talk about some ways that you can store them. I'm going to speed up a little bit through some of this because I'm mindful that I've got Josh on standby and I want to get this fireside chat going. But private keys, we're not going to, and public keys, this is just kind of give you a visual. The public keys, what you would share to be able to kind of, somebody to send you Bitcoin, but you would need access to the private key, which is kind of when it does the signature, that long string of numbers. They actually take that and they convert that very long string of numbers into these seed phrases for you to make it easier, because that would be really hard. Has anybody ever tried to put in a password from a password manager, and it makes it really quite difficult? So then they convert them into these seed phrases to make it easier for you. There generally will be 12 to 24 words. The more words, that extra layer of security. We're not going to unpack on the technical level, and I'm not even really that. I'm better at understanding it and kind of how it works, but basically the cryptography and behind it and how they use it to kind of create these seed words. But the order is very, very, very crucial. So if you're creating a wallet, and we do have a lesson, like a webinar, where we actually teach people how to create a Web3 wallet. We're not going to go through that today, but just make sure that you write them down in the right order, and then you're never going to store them online. I've actually got some tips, but I just want to make sure that I hammer this home, that you never store. I keep hearing of people's accounts being compromised, and they'll store them on their computer somewhere, and I'm just like, never store them online. And we've got some tips that we're going to jump through here to wrap up this session. Always back up your private keys, okay? Some wallets, and now I do want to mention a lot of wallets now, like MetaMask and I think even Phantom. Um, they're letting you create accounts with your email or with your Apple ID or your Google login, okay? And it's stored in a different way. So you got to be careful around that, and you have to learn what does that mean? What risks are there? Yeah, it's easier because you don't have to manage your private keys, but what does that mean? Okay. So I personally am still very much on the belief that we should be holding our own private keys, but being notice of that. But you can always, even if you create a wallet, with your email, you can go back in afterwards and generally find your private keys and write them down. Because the problem is if anything happens, if you lose your wallet, you lose your phone, you lose anything, if you don't have that privacy, I don't know, you lose access to your email, how are you going to be able to kind of log in? So it's really kind of important, because without your private keys, you will lose your crypto. Okay. And so it's very, just remember, don't be like this guy. We have a big saying, not your keys, not your crypto. This guy, it's a kind of a funny story if you haven't heard of it, but this guy had like a little kind of USB hard drive. that had his seed phrases on it, and he threw it. I think he was moving, he threw it, it had 7,500 Bitcoin on it, and he was trying to pay the local council because he wanted to go through the rubbish to see if he could find it because it's worth a lot of money. Just do whatever 7,500 times the price of Bitcoin right now, which is not the best, but just imagine it when it was at its peak, like 120,000. So don't be like that guy. Make sure that you're never putting anything online. Don't put it in Google Drive. Don't put it in Notes. Don't put it in anything because you could lose your money. So, there's been this guy. This was I don't know. This has been in here for a while, but this kind of famous kind of investor guy got while he was doing something while live stream. Had his seed phrase stored and he got compromised. So always write it down on a pen and paper. And the paradox of using this digital currency, that the safest way to store it is kind of the good old-fashioned way of writing it down on a piece of paper. Now, there's lots of different tips that we can provide you to make sure that you keep that safe. Because remember, like, is it waterproof? Is it fireproof? Is it smudge proof? So there's all types of things. How are you dispersing them? So like I have mine split. I have like a safe, like at a bank that I have my private keys. There's metal that you can use. So there's all different types of ways, but you really need to make sure that you're protecting your private keys. Now, if you're just starting out and just gonna, and dabble a little bit, you might just use a centralized exchange. There's maybe not a big need to transfer your money over into a cold storage wallet and deal with those whole private keys and managing. But if you're gonna hold large sums, I personally always recommend to not leave it on an exchange long term. Um, and just a reminder to remind you again, never take photos of it, never leave it online, just use good old-fashioned kind of pen and paper. This is your kind of best friend in this case. So that wraps up the first lesson. Now, I know that I went through that quite quickly, and as I said in the beginning, I always want to take questions and answers. But what we're going to do before I take any, if you do have any, I don't see any popping up in the chat yet, but as we went through that, or maybe afterwards you go and you're thinking about it and you have a question for me, you can always jump into the community group or you can jump into the education hub and you can ask questions there. There's not only myself, but I've got other coaches and mentors that are coming on board to help. So you can always get support there. But we are going to move on to part two. But before that, next month, our second webinar series with Digital Surge, we're going to actually be going into more some of those topics that we talked about briefly today, like doing your own research. I said to you, don't go and, go and do your own research and before you go and do any type of investing. Well, I remember when I got into crypto, everyone always used to say to me, do your own research, but I was like, I don't know how. I remember one time I was listening to Warren Buffett and he's like, find an undervalued company and invest in it. And I'm like, but how do you know if they're an undervalued company? How do you know to do your own research? And it's so, so important. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. We're going to talk about this discovery zone, which is a new feature that Digital Surge has offered to help people learn how to do their own research. And then we're also going to talk about dollar cost averaging, which is one of the features that I really like inside the Digital Surge platform. It's really easy for me to set up and set and forget when I am deploying capital into my bags that we call. So that will be next month. So please tune into that if you want to learn a little bit more about how to do your research, how to analyze projects, how to find those diamond in the roughs, how do you identify if it's a scam project. That webinar will be for you. And then for now, we are going to jump into part two. And now I did see Josh there. I just want to make sure. Josh, are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How
Okay.
are you?
Good. How are you, Danielle?
I'm good. I'm just going to open this up for a second because I forgot my questions on the other side. Oh, well, actually, I don't need to share my screen anymore. So I can actually stop sharing because we're just going to have a fireside chat. So we don't even need that. Let me just move this over. Haven't seen you in a while. You're still
I
in Dubai?
know. I am. I am. It's starting to get warmer.
Oh, yes, it does. All right, I think I'm ready to go. So we'll just, for recording purposes, I'm just going to start this off nice and clean. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to part two of tonight's webinar. We're going to be jumping in and having a fireside chat with Josh, who is one of the co-founders of Digital Surge. So, thank you, Josh, for tuning in. I know that you're originally from Brisbane, but you are currently living over in Dubai. So, thank you for joining in and tuning in with us today to kind of share some of your insights and talking about some of the pros and cons of these kind of centralized and decentralized wallets and then how exchanges are helping people understand self-custody and the risks and what exchanges are doing to kind of protect their cryptocurrencies. So before we jump into all of the questions that I have prepared for you, can you just give us a little bit of a background on yourself? For many people on this call have probably never met you because you're not even here attending the local events anymore because you're overseas. So could you just give them a little bit of a background of kind of like how you got into crypto, how that led you to kind of Digital Surge, and then we can jump into the topic at hand.
Sure. Well, thanks for the intro, Danielle. I was thinking about this before because my background has been in technology and in cybersecurity, and I got into Bitcoin very early on, mostly through the interest in the technology and the security side of things. This was back, I think it was 2009 when you could mine Bitcoin on a standard computer. So that's how I got involved in it to begin with. I
Were you
remember
mining Bitcoin way back in the day when you could do it on a
I
computer?
was I was mining it just on a normal computer, not even ones with the GPUs. And then the GPU mining came out and I built three custom computers running in the back of my house, and it was like a sauna in there. I think I was making like $300 a week, and I was like, "Yep, I'm
Wow.
gonna be retiring soon." And then the price of Bitcoin crashed down to $10 or something. I mean, I say
Oh my
crashed. It's
God, you're like an
quite
OG.
funny.
You've been in the space for a while. You've seen so many cycles. Wow.
I know I've seen so many, and then I think that was sort of a bit of a hobby for a while, and then the market sort of went into its sort of, I don't know, bear cycle, you could say. And then Bitcoin spiked up to $1,000, I think in 2013, if my dates are correct. And that's when I got interested in it again. I was like, what the? I had heaps
Are
of
you
these
still
things.
holding it though, or had you already sold the Bitcoin you mined?
Unfortunately, I sold most of them. I did find some dust of, like 5 Bitcoin here, 10 Bitcoin here, which is quite nice when it's $1,000. But I mean, nowadays
I wouldn't call
it's
that dust now if I had five Bitcoin.
no, no.
No, 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 no. That's not dust
It's like
anymore.
a house, a house. You're just finding a spare house in a wallet. So, I mean, if I just mined the Bitcoin for a couple of years, did nothing else, then probably could have bought a private island or something by now. But that's not how things went.
And so, how did
I
it lead you into starting Digital Surge, though? Because I know Digital Surge gives a little bit of history on Digital Surge, just an overview for those people on the call that have never heard of you guys. But you've been in the space for a while in the Australian ecosystem, and I know that you're
Yep.
overseas in future, and we're not here to talk about what your future plans with Digital Surge, but maybe you can just give us a bit of a history of where you guys are at
Sure.
and maybe where you're going, and then we'll jump into the topic.
Yeah, we launched Digital Surge officially. Well, if you look at ASIC's registration in July 2017, so it's coming up to 9 years this year. Um, Back then, it was just you could buy and sell Bitcoin. It was a very sort of simple platform. But before I started Digital Surge, there wasn't a lot of options to buy cryptocurrency. A lot of it was pretty complicated. And, I was interested in the technology and I wanted to, build something and bring it to the market. And I sort of recall those early days. It was very the community was a lot smaller. People weren't that interested in cryptocurrency. I mean, Ethereum didn't even exist at the time. And then, Ethereum came out, we had the ICO boom and sort of things blew up. So I guess our philosophy or model has always been just to provide a service that's easy, for everyday Aussies to buy, sell, trade crypto. And
Mm-hmm.
over the years, as the market has adapted, more cryptocurrencies come out, there's been more use case for it. our product offering has increased. I think in the start we only started with Bitcoin, and then we added Ethereum, and now I think we're at 400 and something tokens. Um, so we've always just tried to make a platform that is sort of easy, intuitive for people to use. And as you said before, having the local Australian customer support there. So if you have any problems, you can reach out to the team, and they're more than happy to help. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah, that's.
definitely. That's one of the reasons why I love Digital Surge is just because it's
I,
so easy to use.
I was just thinking about the first time we met. It was at a meetup. I don't think you're working in the crypto space yet, and we met. And I think your first question was to me, why do we need any more crypto exchanges?
I remember that it was at the Bitcoin Christmas party. And I asked because at that point I was still new and I was overwhelmed, right? So for all of the new people that are on the call, you might be overwhelmed. There's all these different exchanges. Digital Surge is just one of them. We're not saying choose Digital Surge. I say I like Digital Surge and I like it because it's easy to use, good customer support, and it's nice to be able to have that. There's some exchanges, and I'm not going to mention their names, that are quite big and you need support. And it's like I lodged a ticket and they were like, we'll get back to you in 5 days. And this is like a business account. And I'm like, well, no, this puts my business on hold for 5 days. Like I need support now. And that's one of those things that I really love about Digital Surge. But I hope that gives everybody a bit of context of your background and your experience. So let's jump in and talk about custody and how exchanges that earlier we went through for people to understand how important it is for them about self custody. But if they're leaving their cryptocurrency on exchanges, there's a lot of pros to that. It's easier. They don't have to worry about managing their private keys. There's a whole bunch of benefits there. But then they also have to wonder how is the cryptocurrency exchange custodying their assets, how safe they are. We've heard of these big kind of exchanges or going under if way back in the day, because you were around the Mount Gox days. If anybody is here is new, that go in
Yeah.
and research. There's histories of these kind of big exchanges, and a lot of the time it comes down to how they were custodying. So a lot of the times too, when you hear scams, it's a lot of times it's people being phished. That's kind of very kind of on how they can get access to your private keys. But then there's also the security of like bad actors within organizations. So we're going to pick your brain today a little bit about how people can understand how exchanges are keeping their digital assets safe. But in your experience, before we start jumping into some of more of the technical kind of questions, where do beginners mostly commonly misunderstand, custody risk, like when they're kind of getting started in the crypto space? Over the years, what do you kind of think is the most misunderstood thing around self-custody?
Yeah, I think it comes down to your, I guess, risk profile, how much money or capital you've got put into the market as to sort of the, I guess, overhead and which decision you make. Um, Obviously, with self custody, like having a hardware wallet, you have complete control. Um, and it's 100% reliant on yourself to make sure that you set it up properly. Obviously, there's the cost to purchase the hardware wallet. I mean, they're about 100 to $200 depending on the model you buy. So if you're only putting $50 into crypto, you might not think there's much point in spending double or triple that amount and buying a wallet. But if you start putting larger amounts of money into it and you intend to, hold it for a long period of time, you might consider a hardware wallet. Um, but obviously, when there's a hardware, if you have a hardware wallet, you need to understand. I think the education is really important, like how to properly manage it. Obviously, those hardware wallets require updates. It requires keeping the private key or the security phrase, seed phrase kept securely, and just sort of understanding what can and can't go wrong with it. And then if you're using a centralized exchange, I mean, there's certain basic hygiene you should follow, such as having a strong, unique password, enabling two-factor authentication, and then sort of if you are sending your crypto out, making sure that you know who you're sending the crypto to. I think people can get scammed because they might buy crypto on, a trusted platform, but then they're sending that crypto over to, a great investment opportunity, which may not be such a great investment opportunity.
Yeah.
So in regards to what they misunderstand, um, I mean, I think if you are storing funds on a crypto exchange and that amount grows over time, you should just like sort of consider, um, how using those funds and um, I guess what the ideal sort of custody arrangement is for yourself. Because if for example, you have a whole heap of crypto funds and you're not actively trading it, you're holding it for long-term storage, then you might consider ways to reduce the risk to that. But on the flip side, if you're actively trading, you may need access to those coins um, quickly because obviously the market can move quickly. For example, if you want to sell if the price is going down, or get in there to buy when the price is, you know, at the right market, the right price for yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Because then there's and we won't go too deep down the rabbit hole, but like I'm a hodler. Majority of my crypto is long-term storage. All of the altcoins that I was too lazy that I'm sitting in my bags and didn't want to transfer into like a native wallet, or maybe at the time they weren't supported by, because I have like a ledger and a treasure, and I'm actually going to be getting a Tangem because we're going to be working with them. So I'm going to be learning about that platform. But so I do have some cryptocurrencies that I do leave on the exchanges, but I also understand sometimes the risk of leaving money on exchanges. I think the risk is a lot lower compared to back in the day with your Mt. Gox and your FTX days and stuff like that, because there is a lot more kind of regulation coming into play. And we're not going to talk about that today, but we do have some, we're working with like Stand with Crypto, which are very policy and regulation. So we will have a lot more topics around that topic. So we won't jump in there down that rabbit hole today. But I do think that it is redis, but people still do need to understand the difference when they're self-custodying in their own hot wallet, whether it be a MetaMask or a Ledger, like a hardware wallet, or if they're leaving it on the cryptocurrency exchanges. And then when do they also make that leap? Like you made a comment, like if you've only um, you sign up, you put in $50, like the example that you used earlier. It might not be worth the hassle of buying a hardware wallet and transferring it over there, or, setting up a cold storage. But maybe when it gets to a point where you're like, oh, like if I lost this, I remember I had that moment one day and I was like, oh, wow, like I can't remember. I think it was like during the first cycles. And I was like, oh, I really should think about moving some of my crypto off. I already had a hardware wallet, but it was a matter of actually just sitting down and moving the crypto off the my centralized exchange over to my hardware wallet. And you do have to sit down and spend time on that. So people do need to make that decision for themselves, right? On like when do they feel comfortable, and then also understanding how that they can store it. Now, one of the benefits of obviously leaving some of the crypto on the exchanges is that maybe you don't have to worry about managing all these different types of private keys. Like you said, you can buy and sell easier because with if you connect your ledger or your hardware wallet for anybody that hasn't used it before, not only you have to plug it in, then send it, but then you also have a transaction fee because you're sending it on the blockchain. And then if you send it to your exchange and then you do more trading, so you might actually have more fees that you're paying if you're trying to actively trade using your hardware wallet compared to if you just left the cryptocurrency on the exchange, and then you have that kind of that easier access. So what I want to transition into next is kind of important, and I think that it's really important for people to do their homework. Not only, we always say do your own research on like your tokens that you're buying, because there's 1,000,001 tokens on the platform, and understanding the project, and that's what we're going to cover in the next webinar. But what I don't think people really know how to do or understand is learn how exchanges, and you're gonna explain how digital surge stores and secures customer digital assets, and how you're using Fireblocks and the MPC technology that supports that security. That's the more technical question that you're going to answer in just a moment. Um, but in how they're choosing those exchanges. What exchanges, how are they, because I don't know the story of Mount Gox and how, but I'm going to assume it was somebody got their hands on the private keys and drained all of the money, which was the customer's money, right? So it's kind of very, very important. And then maybe kind of like some guidance on like how can they start to do their own research on these exchanges? Like, do you guys have this information on your website? And should they be going and taking a look? Okay, well, look, digital search actually explains how they're securing the customer digital assets. Does this exchange do the same? So maybe can you explain at a high level? Try not to maybe go too technical, especially for me, but maybe we have some more
Mhm.
technical people on the call. But explain how you guys secure customers' digital assets.
Yeah. Um, well, with security, it comes down to multiple layers of protection. And I think it's sort of the combination of all of the things together that increases the security posture. So Fireblocks is one of the sort of pieces to the puzzle. For people that don't know what Fireblocks are, they're an institutional grade wallet infrastructure provider. I mean, looking at the website, they've processed $10 trillion in transactions with 550 million wallets secured. I mean, they are sort of one of the backbones of the um, a lot of fintechs, banks, crypto exchanges. They provide a platform for crypto exchanges to manage cryptocurrency for themselves and for on behalf of their customers. Um, and one of the key differences is around the MPC protocol, which is the multi-party computer. Without going to all of the technical details, it's sort of a way for the private key to be split in a certain way where no, it's not stored in one single place at any one time. It's sort of split in three parts, and then those three sort of computers um, sign the transaction, and it gets then broadcast on the network. So, I mean, it's a much more secure way of storing cryptocurrencies than back in the day. For Mt. Gox, I mean, I would imagine that they would have just had a single wallet with the private keys on the server. The server got compromised or something happened. Also, with Fireblocks, there's a whole transaction monitoring policy. There's audits, logs, every transaction that's signed, broadcasted. It's time stamped. There's immutable records. So there's a lot of governance around it. And they are, I believe, ISO certified, SOC certified. They have regular tests, and they don't have access to the cryptocurrency either. So they just provide the infrastructure for the exchanges to, um, I guess, interact with the blockchain and create the wallets and go through the transaction policy. And there's other things in there like daily limits, um, which are enforced and blocks the transactions from going out. So that's sort of part of it. And then obviously it's around our internal policies and procedures, what we do when we onboard staff, our security policies. We do regular pen tests from external companies. Um, I think just generally the industry has matured a lot from the early days where I was, a single person. I think with the Mt. Gox example, it's sort of one guy running the sort of exchange, built it, coded it. There wasn't really any oversight, but as the industry has matured, you're seeing institutions, banks. I mean, we've got ETFs now, um, which they obviously use custodians, and the technology that they use is similar to Fireblocks to store cryptocurrency for people. I would say, um, you know, in Australia, we're going through the new regulation. So it's in Parliament, which is going to set a standard for crypto exchanges that operate in the market. So, that's going to give consumers more confidence that they know that they're dealing with someone that is licensed and they follow certain regulation. There's oversight from ASIC in place. I mean, that legislation is still in Parliament at the moment. It's not been ratified, but ASIC has um, told industry that they want them to be under the existing AFSL regime by the 30th of June this year. So So around 4 months
Mhm.
away, you'll start to see all of the exchanges have their applications in place, or they won't be able to operate after that time without
And will
getting into
that
it.
mean that they'll have to have like a system like you guys are using Fireblocks? I'm going to assume that there's other organizations like Firebox that offer kind of like the same kind of like service. But is that, I guess there's a two-part question for me based off of that. And to the audience also, if you have any questions we go through, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get to them. But two questions that kind of sprung off for me around people understanding, because it's obviously not, is it regulation now that you have to use not necessarily fire blocks, but something like firebox, this type of this technology to be securing because you're dealing with other customers' digital assets. You're basically being trusted to be the self-custody, that you have to have some sort of system in place like this rather than you guys just have all of the crypto like you alluded to like back in the OG probably days with the Mount Gox, which is like over like 10 years ago. But you know, it's not like you've got all of the crypto sitting on like one ledger or some hot wallets and you know, you and the team, a handful of you and the team have access to the safe that, you know, that is, but could exchanges still be operating like that? Like, is that
Yeah, I
possible?
mean,
That
the thing is right now there's a new license being proposed, or it's in Parliament now being discussed, and when it's um approved and comes out, there will be clear guidelines around custody, capital controls, responsible managers, and it'll be fully regulated under if the regulation accepted, it will become a new license category under the existing AFSL regime. So that is not yet in effect, and it's still going through Parliament. So I think like right now, this is a transitionary period of exchanges and people operating that there is not, uh, a standard set at the moment that is enforced. So that's sort of where it becomes, difficult for a consumer when evaluating crypto exchange
Mhm.
because, that is not yet enforced in Australia. I mean, there are obviously custody, uh, licenses under AFSL for traditional banks and stockbrokers, but the proposed new license will have a carve out for this. It's not final yet. So, I mean, we are part of DECA, and it's been consultation with industry, and the regulator around how that will look, and we've submitted applications, or sorry, our submissions with DECA over the years. So, I mean, there is a big change happening. So, there's obviously been situations over the years with other exchanges going bankrupt or people doing bad things. And the regulation is sort of different across different countries. I mean, there is regulation here in the UAE, in Australia, just a little bit behind, but
We're always behind. We're
it's
we're
yeah,
in front. We're the, you know, we're,
we're
I
in
always
front
say
in the
I live in
time.
the future, but we're behind in in how we speed up with regulation and innovation. So I guess to kind of wrap up this question and before we move on to the next one, would you say for a consumer that's looking to and whether they're here based in Australia, we do have a global audience. Like we have some people from the Philippines, we have some people from the States and stuff, and we have lots of a global community between Evolver and all things blockchain. So if they're just trying to analyze an exchange or they hear about an exchange or their friend told them about it and they want to do a little bit of homework or do a bit of research, is it general custom practice if you are using a solution like you guys are saying, hey, you're trying to make sure customers feel that their assets are safe if they leave them on digital surge, and it's because you're using Fireblocks that uses this MPC technology support. My second question was around like multi-sig wallets, and like as you said, there's multiple computers, like so if there has to be like two or three to sign to like send large transactions. But two-part question there. But for the consumers, is it general practice that exchanges will make this information available somewhere on their website that this is, hey, this is the technology, this is how we're keeping your crypto safe? Or is that usually just hard to find information for consumers?
I mean, we talk about it on our website. We've got a link to Fireblocks, and we talk about how we the steps we take to secure the client funds. I mean, I think each exchange is different. But I think it's been the exchanges that have been around for some time. I mean, you can read the reviews from other people online to see what their experience has been like. Um, and depending on the exchange and the location they're in, they may already fall under certain sort of regulation that has certain requirements from the government. Um, and I would say as time goes on, all sort of main jurisdictions will have a particular sort of regulation in place. So um, consumers will have more protection in place.
And maybe
But
access to that information. Like if we use like privacy, like if we kind of talk about like, when the whole data thing and now all the websites have all these things that they have to comply with, like cookies and privacy and how you're collecting their data. You kind of maybe see it going that direction that the regulation eventually once the like kind of the framework of the regulation of the requirements that they will maybe also, or it might be best industry practice to make that information available. Hey, this is our policy. This is how we're protecting, this is the technology that we're using.
yeah, I I think with the new proposed regulation, which is not yet final, there will be certain disclosure requirements from the exchanges for consumers. I mean, when you look at sort of the traditional um, sort of investments in Australia, they would have like product disclosure statements and things like this. So this is, I see where the industry is moving towards with the new regulation. I think what's been a bit of the challenge in the past is um, cryptocurrency, if it's being considered a financial product or not. If it's not a financial product, then there's obviously you can't have an AFSL. And, there's obviously been issues in Australia. ASIC has disagreed with the views of some exchanges like Block Earner, Finder regarding them offering staking. So,
Mhm.
these regulations, these new laws will provide clarity for industry and also for consumers and sort of mandate a certain level of standard that will need to be met for those sort of business to operate. And they will, this will the industry is maturing. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's taken a lot of time, but I mean, overall, like the crypto industry is still a relatively new industry.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to I'll circle back to some of those questions towards the end because I'm mindful of time and because I could probably ask like 10 more questions on that topic. But I want to kind of transition into the percentage of assets that typically are stored on chain and how much is off chain in terms of your guys' kind of best practices. Because I would assume, same with if a consumer was like how we talked about earlier, if they're actively trading, then they're wanting it to probably be, either on an exchange or if they're doing DeFi, they're wanting it in their hot wallet, which obviously has more risk, right? But you need that kind of access for quicker liquidity and being able to kind of transfer things faster. But then obviously you want to have a large sum stored. So what percentage of assets are typically stored offline, and why is that important for risk management perspectives?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's dependent on a case by case basis around what liquidity is needed available to facilitate, standard trading and withdrawals. I mean, one of the things we've worked on is with some of our partners that we connect to get liquidity from and trading. We've signed line of credit agreements, which means we don't need to keep funds with them. We can settle the difference in 24 hours. And then with
Oh, okay.
Fireblocks, there's policies there around limits that can go in and out. So you kind of consider Fireblocks as more of a warm wallet as opposed to a hot wallet. So the funds can't all be taken out of there. And then obviously a cold wallet is completely offline. You need to physically plug something in for it to actually be able to move. But I think the technology has improved significantly, and the security controls around it, that these sort of warmer wallet solutions, which, it's not really that available for like consumers. So, I mean, if you have a digital surge account or crypto exchange account, you'll see your balances on the platform, and then behind the scenes, the exchanges will manage the cryptocurrency on your behalf. And generally, you'll see that some of that will be, the exchange will keep some funds in the hot wallet to facilitate, funds coming in and out. But a lot of exchanges now have moved more to like this MPC sort of system or multi-sig. So even though those funds are online, um, you know, they can't automatically be signed, um, by the API or by the system automatically, depending on the limit of the transaction. It'll require one staff member, two staff members, three staff members, and then there'll be daily limits, hourly limits. So, even sort of allows the organization to protect from, if someone's computer was compromised or
Mm-hmm.
whatnot, to sort of limit the exposure. Whereas with a hot wallet, whatever's in the hot wallet could be completely drained out.
Yeah.
So the warm wallets kind of give that balance of being able to have funds available to facilitate trading and to facilitate withdrawals for customers. But this may happen sometimes on our platform. Customers make a withdrawal, it's pretty much instant because our system is able to broadcast that out 5 blocks.
Mm-hmm.
But if we have lots of withdrawals in one day or a customer makes a very large withdrawal, there may be a delay. It will sit there in pending and it will send an alert to us. And then, that may require involvement from multiple staff members to approve those transactions because it's gone over the pre-configured limits. And
To
then if
make
it's,
sure that they're true. And I think we talked about this. I can't remember who I was speaking to. I think it was last night we hosted an event in Brisbane, and it's like sometimes it's annoying when I'm like trying to transfer money out from my exchange account, because it's like I get the 2FA and then I get the email and then it's all these steps. But I also know it's for my own protection, that it's like it's kind of implemented these three or four is to really make sure that it's me sending these funds. So I know that it's there to protect me. Um, with one of my questions just kind of went away, because it actually kind of leads me into my next question. Beyond kind of storage technology, what other operational processes are in place to protect customer funds? And so that's on that kind of like that 2FA, like you were saying, this
yeah,
different layers. So I guess my question is to you, same with the banks, right? You might be able to go to the ATM and take out 1 or 2 thousand, and then they put these limits, anything over 5,000, then you have to kind of go and request for it, or they have to kind of verify. And they're
yeah,
doing it. A lot of people think that I think people think that they're doing it to trying to control how much money we can spend, and it's not. It's more about just to make sure if your account has been compromised, that we're just not going to let $20,000 leave your account, you know? So is there a
yeah.
standard practice amongst kind of like all exchanges, or like say for example, banks probably have a standard practice? Is it pretty common that like there's certain limits and it's kind of pretty standard practice kind of across all exchanges, or do they come internally, or do those limits come from fire blocks? Like who decides what these limits are, and when there's two or three or four people that need to decide how much to sign for
Well,
that transaction?
I would say currently right now it's up to the individual exchanges and their sort of management policy as to what the limits and controls are. There's not like a prescribed, this is the amount. There may be best practices. So, I mean, I can talk from our side what we do. I mean, we have multiple limits there. So, by default, when a customer creates an account, we don't automatically enable the ability for customers to send crypto off the platform. They can buy, they can sell, and they can withdraw back to the same bank account that they deposited from. So if you say deposit $1,000, bought some crypto, sold it for $2,000, you can sell it and withdraw back to your bank. That's the default. But if you want to send the crypto to another wallet, we'll do additional verification to make sure we know who you are. We'll ask some questions depending on risk profiles. If we think that you may be more likely to be at risk, we do unfortunately find people do get targeted for scams and they're told to purchase cryptocurrency and send it off. The problem is once cryptocurrency has been sent, there's no way for us to retrieve it. So we want to make sure that they understand those risks. And then in also to enable the crypto sends will require, a high level of 2FA. The first time you make a withdrawal to a new address, you'll need to confirm it via email. We've now got an address book feature so you can store your cryptocurrency addresses in there because there's also a risk if you copy and paste the wrong address. Um,
Hmm.
so we've built all of these things into the system, also around daily limits. It's not to stop or control people from doing what they want with their money. It's just about making sure that there's safeguards in place in case someone, you know, gets their account compromised or gets taken advantage of.
Yeah.
But I guess with a strong password with 2FA and email, like all of those things need to be compromised in order for you
Mm.
to lose the cryptocurrency out of the platform. And then it's sort of capped, to a certain limit. And, if you don't need to send cryptocurrency out of the platform, you can always just ask for that feature to be turned off and the team will turn it off. So we
Mm.
do
Have
find
that
some people
mixture.
that don't want to send crypto off, they just have it disabled. So the worst that could happen is someone gets your password and your 2FA and then they can trade for you. I mean, obviously that's still not ideal, but I mean it's around mitigating the risk of losing funds. And
Yeah,
then
yeah, definitely. You need to put those into place because it is, one of the things, and we didn't go too deep down in one of the other lessons that I do is talking about scams. And even I got compromised. I fell for a phishing attack. It was a deep fake, and we don't have time to go through it today, but it's very common in this industry. And so we like to talk about the pros and the cons. Yeah, there's lots, it's a great emerging technology. I think it's changing our financial ecosystem, it's changing our payment rails, but there are risks. It is a new industry. Like you said, it's maturing, but a lot of the times, any new industry, you think of the dot-com boom, you think of the credit card boom, you think of all of those, their new systems create vulnerabilities, and there's always hackers, right? And so I always say to people, it's not crypto that's the scam, it's the people. It's usually the people in behind it, right? So it's not the technology. So that it's great that these exchanges have these in place and storing like you're storing your wallets, making sure that you're sending it to the right person. Once it's like a recognized, same with traditional banking. They're like, oh, hey, wait, we've done our check, we verify. So next time that you send money to Josh, we know it's good because but the first time I send money to you, the bank wants to make sure that it's really me sending the money to try to prevent it. Because you said it's much easier to prevent it from leaving than trying to retrieve it once it's gone.
yeah, it's
Um,
almost impossible to retrieve it.
yeah, exactly, especially
Unfortunately.
with crypto.
I mean,
So, oh, you go ahead.
I was gonna say we've stopped customers from being scammed. I mean, a story I can say, we had a gentleman um you know wanting well, the customer was KYC verified, everything checked out, and we then had someone in chat, and in our chat system it tells us where the customer is located from, and it was a guest from Nigeria asking about customer X, why are you not letting their withdrawal out? And we called the customer and he thought that he was sending money to his girlfriend, but who was in Melbourne, but it was someone in Nigeria who was talking to him, and he nearly lost a large amount of money. So he was
Wow.
very thankful we could provide him that information. But these things happen all the time to people that get caught up in things.
Mhm.
So just sort of making sure you really know
Yeah.
who you're interacting with, especially on the internet.
Yeah, phishing is it's huge. We could do a whole lesson on it. It's huge. I've known people that have been compromised from phishing. I was compromised, but because I didn't have my private keys, like I talked about earlier, I didn't have it stored anywhere in my browser. I didn't have it stored in notes. I didn't have it stored. I don't store any of my passwords in Google because basically they got temporary access to my browser until I had identified that they were in my computer. So any session tokens that I had open so they could temporarily access my email. But they didn't actually have my password. They just had this access to that session key, right? So temporarily they could access my emails. So if I had emailed myself my private keys and stored it and or something like that, they could have maybe have gotten access to it, notes, all that types of things. So that's why we always say to people, never store your private keys online
Yeah.
because if you do get compromised, that's the first thing that they're looking for immediately is has this person been dumb enough to store their private key somewhere on their computer, and that's the main thing that they're looking for, and so that they can drain your
Yeah.
wallets or get access to your accounts. And that's what we'll go a little bit more deeper with DeFi in a future lesson, but I'm mindful of time. I know we got a couple questions in the chat that I'll circle to at the end for Manish and Martin that are there, but just to kind of close off today's conversation, I encourage anybody else if they have any last minute questions on there or questions around how Digital Surge stores their currencies or anything of that. But if someone's attending tonight's webinar or watching the recording, because this recording will be shared and then kind of put into the LMS for people to continue learning past this live session, is if they want to immediately kind of do something to improve how they're self-custodying or managing their custody, whether that's using kind of an exchange, maybe it's a practical step like checking that they have all these 2FAs, or like the example that you said, maybe if you're not, say like with my browsers, when I'm not using those wallets, I turn them off. So you're basically saying, hey, if you're not going to be sending, you can let us know and we can turn that off. So maybe that is one practical step, but do you have just like kind of a piece of advice for people that are like thinking about how they're going to protect themselves with custody? What kind of advice do you have for them to take away from this call?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to, I mean, education is probably the most important part. Just understanding the risks, um, and your risk profile. I mean, practical steps, if you're using an exchange, bookmark the exchange, because sometimes scammers make fake ads in Google, which tricks people into clicking onto the wrong website. So that's a practical step. Enable two-factor authentication, use a strong, unique password. And I mean, on Digital Surge by default, we don't enable crypto sends unless you request it. So if you're requesting it, then make sure there's a reason for it. And then if you're sending funds to another wallet, do a small test transaction, make sure it arrives safely, and then you can send the rest. And if you're going to go down the self custody route, I would recommend a hardware wallet. I mean, I personally like Trezors. So same thing, just do a small test transfer, get comfortable with the interface, um, and what do some education around what you need to do to store the seed phrase, and make sure that you know how to, recover it if you need to, etc. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sure
definitely. I've had
I'm sure you have some good educational content on wallets, Danielle.
Yeah, well, there's a whole, like I said, we have a whole workshop that we did. We actually did the Learn and Earn workshop with you guys at the start in January, and I've done it around the world. And we actually teach people how to create like a Web3 wallet or write down their seed phrases. And I always say to people to like practice, you can actually like delete the app off of your phone, right? Pretend like you've lost your phone and then like reinstall it. Like just kind of go through all of
Yeah.
those things. You do have to like that's why it takes time to learn this industry. It's not a get rich quick. And I think, compared to back in the days where there were days where, you could have mined Bitcoin on your laptop or bought a meme coin and made good money, I think that those days are over because, and that's just in my opinion, because we are maturing, which is good. That's actually like Bitcoin has more substance. We actually have more, so it's actually good for the long term. But yeah, people definitely need to take the time to educate themselves. So we're going to take this question from Martin around cold storage, and then we'll wrap up today's conversation. When can already get some yield or staking of some cryptos on the hardware wallets? This is somewhat limited at the moment. What do you see in the future for staking and slash good yields from crypto stored, like using a cold storage wallet? That's actually a really good question because I remember years ago, I don't play in the DeFi space, and this is why I recommend people not to play in the DeFi space unless you have the time to devote to learn because I had heard that you could stake using your hardware wallet, and this was many years ago. I wanted to stake my Polkadot, and I was trying to learn how to do it for my ledger because I always had this fear of like using a platform that I would transfer my crypto to get stake and yield, but it's the same thing. They could go out of business tomorrow and like take all my crypto with them. So I wanted it to be in my hardware wallet, and I couldn't figure out how to do it for the life of me. This is a couple of years ago. I've never kind of gone back, but now Martin's out and asked this question. So do you have any experience with that? And do you see that kind of being going to be something once we have regulation around staking? Obviously, I know that that's a whole different conversation, but do you see that being something that is easier to do in the future from your cold storage wallet?
Um, I know that for Trezors, for example, they do support native staking on some of the cryptocurrencies. So I guess in order for it to work on a hardware wallet, the protocol itself needs to support staking, and then there may be minimum amounts that needs to be locked up. So off the top of my head, I believe some of the ones you can stake is Cardano, Solana, Ethereum. I'm not sure. There may be other cryptocurrencies on that list. Um, but you just have to sort of look at it on a case by case basis. I mean, sort of a point that you made before, Trezor only supports some cryptocurrencies, ledgers support others. There's a bit of fragmentation. Some of them do and don't support it. I mean, I think
Hmm.
probably just start by looking at the cryptocurrencies that offer staking that maybe you're interested in, and then seeing what wallets they support, and then you can check if they have the native staking. But with the native staking option, cryptocurrency generally will stay in your wallet. Well, not stay in your wallet. It won't move. It won't move from the. It generally won't move from the blockchain. Depends. You'll be like you may be delegating it to a node, and then you have some ability to recover it. So you're not exposed to counterparty risk, but each protocol is different. Ethereum, there's like slashing risk, and then I think there's some of these like smart contract staking where the token is actually converted to a smart token. So, then
Mm.
there's different risks there if that smart contract has an issue. So it sort of just really depends on what your objective is. I mean, we saw with Terra Luna, they were offering this amazing 20% yield, but the whole thing was basically a scam and everyone lost their money that was in it. So, I
Hmm.
mean, I guess the general saying goes, if it sounds too good to be true, then it
It
probably
is.
is.
Yeah, and we're not going to talk too much more about that, but that was a great question. Thank you, Martin. But to wrap up, we will talk more about kind of if some of you are on the call or listening to this recording and you're like, what is staking? What are they talking about? And what is slashing? And what is all this? We're going to unpack that in a future webinar. So make sure that you keep your ears and eyes open, register a Luma account. But I hope that all of you kind of got some value from today's session and understand how important it is to really understand your risks. And if you're storing your crypto on exchanges or off chain, how you're interacting. We'll dive down more around kind of DeFi and wallet and storage and connecting in a later call. But Josh, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope everybody else that's watching the recording or attended today got some value. And if they have questions, please reach out to me in the chats. And Manish, I will answer your question after this. I just want to round up this conversation. But you can reach out to me. You can reach out, ask in the Education Hub. If you have questions for the digital search team, if you create an account, they have like a little kind of chat feature. Their team's great. You can go in there. They can help you. They can support you. But thank you so much, Josh, for joining us
Thank
tonight.
you,
I hope
Danielle.
you enjoyed it. And I hope to see you soon. I'm actually going to be coming to Dubai, so we'll be able to catch up soon. But thank you very much, everybody that joined us today for the live session. If you're watching the recording, thank you for watching. Ask your questions in the Education Hub, and we'll see you on the next call.